gusterly winds, particularly around exposed coasts of the northwest, and we will continue to see that rain just start to creep in to the Outer Hebrides. Across Northern Ireland, a fairly cloudy start, similar across the north of England, a fair amount of cloud, and then a mix of cloud and clear spells. Most of the clear spells across East Anglia, parts of Sussex and Kent too. And that generally sets us up for the rest of the day. There will be some cloudy spells at times, the best of the sunshine across East Anglia, Sussex and Kent, and we will continue to see those strong winds in western areas, particularly the northwest of Scotland once again, where there is the risk of those coastal gales, and that rain once again slowly pushing into the far west of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. So some outbreaks of rain in the west, but otherwise largely dry, and with highs of around 17, 18, feeling rather pleasant for the time of year. Into the evening, that rain will continue to push its way eastwards across the country, and then it will move erratically across much of England and Wales as we head into Friday, leading us into a fairly unsettled weekend with some rain and showers. Otherwise, that's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M74 southbound in South Lanarkshire is partially blocked for an accident between junction 11 Ponale heading towards 12 for Millbank. Severe delays on the M62 in West Yorkshire. On the eastbound section, there's 2 lanes closed for an overturned car that was towing a trailer and an accident. That's between junction 22 Rishworth Moor heading towards 23 for Huddersfield. It's also very slow on the opposite carriageway due to onlookers. The usual queues in the West Midlands for the M5 northbound to join the M6 at junction 8. Queues on the M25 anti-clockwise in Surrey. There's a lane closed for emergency pothole repairs between junction 9 Leatherhead and 8 for Reigate. And queues on the M20 coastbound in Kent. It's partially blocked for a broken down vehicle between junction 4 Leybourne and 5 for Aylesford.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway, and you really could be next.
Hi, I'm Angela from Wigan and I won £30,000. Winning the money enabled me to treat my children, which I've not been able to do for a while. And if I can win, anyone can win.
For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB08 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close 5 p.m. this Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up tonight, apparently, everyone, we're going to see a slashing of the amount of money we spend on foreign aid when it comes to the next budget. Mainly, though, because we are spending an absolute fortune in asylum seeker costs. But get this right, because critics are saying that we should still maintain our foreign aid spending anyway. Your thoughts? Also, as well, yet another review into the water sector in this country. I'm going to put it to you, how on earth do we fix the mess that our waterworks seem to be in. And get this, Donald Trump, he's not happy at all, ladies and gents. He reckons essential election interference from the UK Labour Party. What do you make to that? Also, as well, the Labour Party are pushing ahead with an armed policing probe. This is, of course, after that officer was cleared of Chris Cabba's murder. But my question to you is, all of this a little bit too little, too late? I've got all of that and lots more keeping me company till 7. Look at this, my panel, the former member of the European Parliament, Baroness Jacqueline Foster, and the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. But first up, everyone, let's get ourselves up to speed with the 6 o'clock news.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wenslow with your headlines from the GB newsroom. First, some breaking news in the last half hour. Dorset police investigating 3 unexplained deaths in a care home in Swanage say carbon monoxide poisoning is now the primary line of inquiry. The force have been giving an update on the ongoing incident at Gainsborough Care Home, where 48 elderly residents were living. South Western Ambulance Service responded in the early hours of this morning, dispatching a hazard response team and 10 double-crewed ambulances. Chief Superintendent Heather Dixie said 7 people have now been taken to hospital as a precaution, but she assured that there was no risk to the wider public. To Turkey now, where multiple people have been killed in a terror attack at the headquarters of a defence and aerospace company. Local media is reporting a loud explosion and showed footage of an exchange of gunfire at the site in the Turkish capital of Ankara. It's understood at this point that 4 people are known to have been killed and 14 injured, some in a critical condition. An image has now emerged of the alleged gunman. Security camera images from the attack aired on television show a man carrying a backpack and holding an assault rifle. Back in the UK, operations have now returned to normal at Birmingham Airport after an evacuation, and all flights were suspended following reports of a suspicious vehicle. In a post on social media, the airport advised travellers to check their latest flight information and apologised for any inconvenience and disruption, saying the safety and security of everyone at the airport was our #1 priority. Now, Yvette Cooper has announced that firearms officers facing trial over shooting suspects will receive anonymity up to the point of conviction. The Home Secretary's common statement follows the jury's decision to clear police marksman Martin Blake of the murder of Chris Cabba, who was unarmed when shot. The Met Police Commissioner has described the current accountability system as broken, raising concerns about morale among firearms officers. Further details on the review are expected from the Home Secretary tomorrow.
Government has made it a mission to put confidence back into policing. So as part of that work, I want to update the House on new measures that we will take forward in response to the accountability review and following ongoing work to respond to issues raised by the previous Angelini and Casey reviews. A package of reforms to rebuild confidence for police officers and for communities, to tackle the unacceptable delays and confusion in the system, ensuring the complexity of specialist operations is considered at an early stage, and ensuring that the highest standards are upheld and maintained.
And a third body has been recovered from the English Channel after a migrant boat sank, according to the French Coast Guard. A passing ferry recovered the 3rd victim after a body was spotted floating in the water. A 4th migrant was taken to hospital for treatment after being pulled from the water earlier this morning. Around 50 people were on board when the vessel went down, leaving many stranded in the water. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that. My name is Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, I've got the former member of the European Parliament, Jacqueline Foster. I was thinking, shall I add the Baroness? Shall I not? But I'm going to add it. I'll add it. Baroness Jacqueline Foster. We like that, don't we? I'd definitely be using my Baroness title if I was one. Also, as well, the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Good evening to both of you. You're very welcome. As are each and every single one of you at home tonight, what is on your mind? There is a lot we need to discuss before 7 o'clock, so get in touch with me all the usual ways. You can email me gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website gbnews.com/yoursay, or of course you can tweet or X me. If you're going out as well, worry not. You can take us with you because, of course, we are on your DAB radio as well. But look, let's talk, shall we? This topic really gets everyone going, doesn't it? The amount of money that we spend on overseas aid, is it enough? Is it too much? What should be incorporated as part of that? And so on and so forth. Also, when it comes to the budget, there's a lot of speculation as to what is going to be included in that. Well, now, it seems that the Labour Party are planning to slash the amount of money that we spend on overseas aid. I've got to say, a lot of people will say, well, that makes common sense, but I have to say, it's only really because of the eye-watering amount of money that we're currently spending on our asylum system. It's an absolute fortune. In the last financial year, it was over £4 billion. Jacqueline Foster, where are you on some of this?
Well, I'd support the Labour Party on this. I've always believed that the budget for overseas aid is too big. I spent 5 years, when I was an MEP years ago, I spent 5 years on the Africa, Caribbean, Pacific Joint Parliamentary Assembly, apart from other delegations. We ploughed millions into these countries, and a lot of it went to waste.
Aaron Bastani, your thoughts?
We should clip that first bit up. I agree with Labour.
I was about to say that.
That'd be a bit naughty, wouldn't it? No, but it's good. It's good if people can agree across party divides. That's excellent. What I'd say is one thing, which is this, and of course we've got the budget coming up on the 30th. Right now, the debt interest payments that the UK is paying for its public debt are about £114 billion a year. It's about 10% of overall government spend. It was 5% in 2019. So we are spending more than 50 billion more on the interest than we were before COVID. When you look at that, we're spending as much on those interest payments as we are on education. Then I think it puts stuff like this into stark relief. There is an argument to say we really cannot afford to be doing what David Cameron would like us to do, which is spend 0.7% of GDP on overseas aid.
I've got to say, your opening sentence where you said you agreed with the Labour Party, I think that was so unexpected. I think you blew your own microphone up then. So I do apologise if anyone had strange sound interruptions. I think it was just the absolute unexpectedness of you saying that you agreed with Labour. What were you saying?
Well, because the thing is, we have soft power and we have soft diplomacy. And we have relations. I mean, we are key within the Commonwealth. Obviously, we head the Commonwealth. And I have no issue when we provide monies that is well spent and going to countries that really need it. The issue I have with many countries where we send aid, apart from corruption and fraud, we've allowed over the decades, in my view, a lot of these governments from really countries that are wealthy with natural resources, if you look at parts of Africa and across the world, to actually get away with absolute murder, frankly. The money goes in, half the time it's funding, local wars and tribal disputes and all of this sort of stuff. And what we see is that a lot of the civilians, the people that should actually be benefiting from this, are living still on $1 a day. I mean, I've been there. I've been to some of these countries, and frankly, it's awful to see. Obviously, they try and do it via projects. And again, if you get proper oversight in projects, then hopefully something will work. But, when we're giving money to China, Syria, we're giving money to countries that aren't actually our friends. And I just think it's unacceptable. So I have no issue with the budget for overseas aid being slashed and going actually to people that need it. And equally, obviously, we've got to tackle the amount of money on illegal immigration. I've
got to say, a lot of people are actually quite upset by this because what they're saying is that current projections suggest it could drop to 0.36% of our GNI. And just to remind you, because I think Aaron was mentioning this a second ago, it was supposed to be 0.7%. So that 0.36% would be the lowest level in 17 years.
Yeah, but put it in pounds, shillings and pence, because we all talk percentages. The public go, well, what's 0.7? What's 0.3? We're talking about a budget last year of 15 billion, 15,000 million pounds that the British taxpayer is providing in overseas aid. We're not saying that you get rid of all of it. But clearly it is far too much. There are far more pressures where money needs to be spent in this country. At the same token, pensioners, 10 million pensioners have been, going to lose their winter allowance, their winter heating allowance. So it's got to be put in perspective. And I think it's been far too high for far too long, in my view.
But one of the problems is that many people will be quite critical of what they would determine are to be populism and some of the attitudes that people have in society at the moment. But there will be an awful lot of people in society now that sit there and feel we do not put British citizens first. So when it comes to the amounts of money that we're talking about at the moment, so we all know by now the winter fuel allowance, that's been taken off people. That was to try and save £1.5 billion. The private schools, you're going to have loads of kids' private school education interrupted again. That's to try and save about, depending on who you believe, about £1.3 billion. The projection of what we spend on the asylum system, it's due to cost £6.4 billion this year. And people will sit there and say, hang on a second, you want to impact all of our lives, you want to make the pensioners cold in the winter, you want to disrupt the kids' schooling, you want to tell everyone else to fasten their belts and raise taxes here, there and everywhere. Tony Blair chipped in today, piping up about charging per mile. Yeah. While simultaneously allowing the asylum budget to spiral to a potential $6 billion odd. What do you say to this?
It's a lot of money, and in Labour's defence, they would say it's too much money and we want to bring it down. I don't think anybody says we should be spending that much money on asylum policy.
Well, why is there not a national emergency being declared?
Well, Labour would say, and I don't know the particulars of the argument, Labour would say that Tory maladministration and the failure on Rwanda has now created this backlog which will have to be dealt with and which will cost a significant amount of money. Just to be clear, that's not necessarily my view. Like I say, I'm not that familiar with the details. That would be the Labour position. But to go back to what Baroness Foster said a moment ago, pounds, shillings and pence, this is really important. £14 billion is a lot of money. It's a huge amount of money. And we should absolutely be funding things like contraception, clean drinking water, maternal health. There are women out there in this world of ours, 8 billion people, who give birth in the dark with no access to electricity, OK? We should obviously be trying as a species to avoid that. But lots of our overseas aid goes towards, quote-unquote, economic development projects, which aren't actually about the bare essentials. It's about building the tourism industry in Ecuador or about building private health clinics in India. India has a space programme, OK?
India has more... what people will be shouting at the screen. You've hit the nail on the head.
India has more billionaires than this country does, right? So if India wants to deal with its huge issues with regards to food deprivation, healthcare, which are massive, right? Hundreds of millions of people are affected. Then Indian billionaires should be the ones dealing with that.
But then, because I think it's appalling that we spend money in countries that are doing the things that you're saying that they're doing, which we all know they're doing with their finances. But the flip side of that is, well, people will say it's soft power, soft power, soft power. We've already heard that today. So what would you say back to that?
So I think soft power is a real thing. And I think Brits don't realise how much soft power this country has, actually. I think you probably should, if you're being smart about it, put more money towards the World Service, more money towards the British Institute. I think you probably should do those sorts of things. But I do think that the idea that soft powers is an outgrowth of giving aid to projects like I just mentioned. I didn't make those up, by the way. Those are real projects.
No, I know.
A luxury hotel in Quito was part of an overseas aid project paid for by the British taxpayer.
Can I just bring it back to the point I made? What we've seen over the decades is the government. These countries all have governments in whatever form. And what they've been allowed to do is actually not take responsibility for their own citizens. And while you've got the West or you've got the UK or the EU or whoever...
Well, China increasingly, right?
Putting in funds all the time. If you just take China out of it for this, for a minute, what are their governments doing? Because what we then see, we've got wars all over Africa and various places. We've got massive Russian and Chinese influence now because some of these places have been decimated. These are countries, they've got some of the most wonderful natural resources that, if they were used properly, whether it's oil or whether it's diamond or whatever it is, wood, they've got all sorts of natural resources. And the profits from any of that never go to the people that live there because of, I was in Nigeria at one stage. And they, I think, created about 10 billion a year from oil revenue, and less than 1 billion were going to the population.
Well, there you go. You know, the viewers, I knew you'd be doing this at home. When you were talking, the viewers were getting in touch saying almost identical things to what you're saying. Michelle, please, can someone point out that some of these countries that we give cash to have space programmes and so on and so forth?
It's true.
How did I know that you guys would be thinking that at home? Jerry says, Michelle, this is very simple. All foreign aid should be stopped. Oh, there'll be a lot of people that push back on that.
I disagree with that.
Georgia, she's got in touch and said, cool, blimey, I finally found a Labour policy that I agree with. There you go. I know, you see, what can we say? Look, there's lots more we need to talk about. I'll bring you back into the conversation after the break, but I want to talk to you about the state, the absolute state of water in this country. Another review launched. So you tell me, what is the answer to the mess that our water is in?
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
True crime is everywhere.
Yep, and next weekend, CrimeCon UK takes place in London. And joining us now to tell us more about that event and the true crime phenomena is former detective Stephen. How do you pronounce your surname? Keogh. Sorry, Stephen.
That's all right.
I should have texted you before.
No worries.
And Nancy, and again, Nancy, what's your surname?
Bourne.
Bourne, thank you. I'm showing my ignorance there, but thank you both for joining us. So, Stephen, you're a former top cop. Hope you don't mind me describing you as that. At CrimeCon and other events like that, do you get into sort of the semantics of the investigations and, you know, how... For example, how I was watching something the other night where somebody was unfortunately murdered, but you saw the crime scene investigators trying to work out from which side the person was attacked from. Did the knife come from the left-hand side or the right-hand side? Is it all that kind of stuff?
So for me, everything I've done since I've left the police is about sharing that knowledge of investigations, because if you watch TV, they get it wrong a lot. So what we try and do, I'm not the only police officer there, there's experts, so forensic scientists, psychologists, all from that investigative world, just trying to get across, well, actually, this is how it's really done. This is what we do, not what you're going to see on telly. And I think that's really important. So for me personally, coming along to CrimeCon, I just look at the list of people that are there, honestly, and I'm proud to be associated with them. There are some fascinating people there. People who've really fought for justice for their children. People who are campaigning for victims, for survivors. So it's an event that when you look at the name, you might think, oh, they're just going to sit there talking about serial killers and what they got up to. Couldn't be further from the truth. It's really about what goes on, how it impacts the victims, how the investigations are carried out. It's educational as much as anything.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Baroness Jacqueline Foster and Aaron Bastani remain alongside me. Well, lots of you are getting in touch about that foreign aid. Mike, you've got in touch and said, Michelle, this is all very simple. Charity begins at home. Have people seen the state of our country? Why do we focus so much on helping everyone else? Somebody else has got in touch saying, Michelle, why do we seem to be responsible for everybody else's failure? We've just been having that conversation about why do so many governments seemingly not invest their money in their own citizens. But I could tell you as well other people saying that 0.7% as it was should be the target that remains. You can have the final opinion on that. But look, water, the absolute state of it. We've discussed this often, haven't we? But now there's going to be another review of the biggest one, apparently, the biggest review in 35 years. Looking at what we do with this, you guys have got straight in touch with me. Charlotte says, Michelle, we all need water. It's essential. Nobody should be profiting from water. Fine, but what do you think we should do with these companies then, Charlotte? Sharon has got straight in touch as well, saying that all water companies should be brought into state control. And another one of my viewers, who's not giving me their name, say, banning water companies from making a profit. Are we actually serious in this country? Aaron Bastani, what do you think that we should do with the water?
Well, I have to say, as somebody on the left, the privatised water industry in this country has made a better argument for socialist politics to the working class than Chairman Mao, Lenin, Marx and Engels put together, because it's shorthand for fundamentally the failure of a certain way of doing things. Now, I think even if you support market capitalism, free markets, liberal economics, you would say, well, hold on a second, Aaron, that's because of things like natural monopoly, and it was never going to work. And actually, I buy that argument. And what I'd say to people who think that we should have privatised water is pretty simple. Yes, it's a necessity, but at the best of times, it's a very low margin, a very boring industry. If you want to be a capitalist and make loads of money, don't knock yourself out. But stuff like this is too important and too low profit. Just leave it. Let some things be run either by the state, or the proposal here is that they are non-profit making entities. I don't frankly know how that's going to work.
Well, in Wales, they run not-for-profit.
Yeah, that's the model.
In Scotland, that's more of a nationalised model. So England's model is actually for-profit and therefore very different to the others.
And globally very rare, very unusual, the model we have in this country, in England, like you say. Take Thames Water. It services our metropolis, London, a tier one global city. It has to invest about £18 billion just to break even over the next 20 years, Thames Water, just to tick over and provide the services that people expect. How is it going to do that? It's going to have to massively increase bills. By the way, it's laden with £15 billion worth of debt, which has existed over the last 30 years. It wasn't there when it was first created, and it's paid £7 billion worth of dividends. What I'm saying is state ownership isn't always the answer. Not always the answer, but I think with regards to water, we have to, as the kids say, take the L and accept that private ownership has not worked with how we oversee this sector.
Yeah, but someone that's not going to be willing to take the L, to quote the youth back at you, is the shareholders of these companies. And don't forget, private organisations, they do have an obligation to these shareholders. We're talking about price hikes, just to give some more context to that. Southern Water, apparently, might be seeking an 84% increase. 84%! I mean, you can't just say, do you know what, I'm going to dehydrate myself for the next 6 months. You need your water. Are you in that catchment area of Southern Water? 84%. How would you even afford that? Should we listen to the Environment Secretary, actually? I was just about to bring you in, but should we just listen to Steve Reid before we do?
Will ban the payment of multi-million-pound bonuses to water bosses when they don't deserve it, and it will make them face criminal charges if they're overseeing wrongdoings.
Sorry, but I was distracted there. Was that Steve Bray in the background again? Is he not? He's
still there.
Was that him?
No idea.
I need to give my
somebody else.
I need to give my spectacles away, but I don't know who that was there. But anyway, have they got enough better to do with their time? Anyway, sorry, we digress. Water, what do you think?
Well, I think if we go back to why we privatised it, I think the problems arose because there wasn't enough investment, actually, that was being put into the structures in the, obviously, whether it was sewage, whether it was cleaning up rivers or whatever, back in the 80s and 90s. And that was one reason to try and get more investment in, more external investment as well. And I remember the Mersey Basin, which is where I'm from, and at one stage there were no fish that were really in the river. The pollution had been dreadful. And I think once it was privatised, I think the investment that went in there was about £4 billion that came in from, obviously, the private companies at the time. And that now is, in very good order. So I think it's very difficult to just sort of have a broad brush and say all of these companies have been awful, because I don't think they all have. I like the idea of Welsh Water with this non-profit system that they've got, and Scottish Water. I think that's quite easy for them because they're covering the whole of Wales and Scotland are covering the whole of Scotland. Of course, England itself, the bigger part is broken up. The biggest pressures, you're right, have been in the southeast because of the number of people that live here. Thames Water, which I came under, but I'm also up in the northwest. So there are certainly some water companies that actually have been, I think, pretty efficient. What I get annoyed about is the chief executives of some of the privatised water companies and the amount of millions that they're paying themselves, while there are clearly issues. We know we've got problems with Victorian sewers. We know we've got problems with the structures, and as the population grows, several million over the last 10 years, and the need for more housing. They're building on we know that rivers need to be dredged. You know, people come up with all sorts of ideas what you should and shouldn't do. Then we get housing being built on floodplains. So it's a massive issue. It's not just about the water out of the tap. By renationalising everything, is that going to solve the...
Well, is that going to solve it?
Will.
Are you in Scotland by any chance? And if you are you absolutely delighted by your waterworks there? Are you very happy with the price that you're paying, the quality of the water, the service that you get? Because that is the nationalised model, essentially. So get in touch and tell me. Also, people will say about pollution levels in Scotland, but you've got to remember, last time I looked anyway, when it comes to the monitoring that they had in some of the places in Scotland, it wasn't quite up to the same levels in terms of the amounts of monitoring that was happening as what was taking place in England. So lots of different things to consider. Angela says, Michelle, water is God-given and it's a basic need. We should never profit from water. The water companies, Angela, would turn around to you and say, we don't drink rainwater. We have to treat sewage and so on and so forth. They would argue that they do a lot of value add into the supply chain of water, and that is why they need to exist.
And can I just raise the question?
If it's really quick, yeah, because I want to talk about Donald Trump.
Very quickly. If they were to renationalise, don't forget, these are contracts, these are big businesses, and the government would need to tell us how much they would need to pay to actually reverse this entire system.
Well, I'll say quickly,
you're talking absolute billions.
In the case of Thames Water, fortunately, I think it's going to go bust. So
it may do.
That's a good opportunity.
But I think, and in addition, there's only 6 million people, I think, live in Scotland. So you're not going to get the same pressures. You're not going to get as parts of England. But it certainly needs to be chivied up here. My water bills are fine in the north, but
before you start giving me a rundown on all your bills, I do need to go. Wally's got in touch and said, how come none of you are mentioning foreign ownership in some of our essential utility services? I think you make a good point there, Wally. Look, I do want to talk to you about Donald Trump. He has made a formal legal complaint against the UK Labour Party. I'll tell you why after the break.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through into this evening and overnight and into tomorrow, largely dry with a mix of cloud and clear spells. Still fairly windy across the northwest of Scotland, though. We can see this clearly with the squeeze in the isobars as this frontal system makes its way in. Otherwise, generally high pressure across most of the country, bringing us that mix of cloud and clear spells overnight, turning a little bit chilly under those clearer skies too. Across Scotland, though, a cloudier picture. Plenty of blustery winds overnight with a risk of coastal gales by the time we reach the morning, and just some outbreaks of rain edging into the Outer Hebrides. A fairly cool night under those clearer skies, but not turning quite as chilly as it did last night. Now, those blustery winds are going to continue across Scotland, still with those risk of gales, particularly around any exposed spots and across any coasts, with just that rain edging into the far west. Otherwise, largely dry, plenty of cloud, quite a cloudy start across Northern Ireland too, and across the north of England, and some blustery winds just blowing up through across the Irish Sea as well. And once again, across the rest of England and Wales, a mix of cloud and clear spells to start the day. And that pretty much sets us up. Once again, a mix of clouds, sunny spells, the best of the sunshine across East Anglia, Sussex and Kent, for example. And then we still have that rain continuing to slowly edge its way into the northwest, so western parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland, starting to see those outbreaks of rain as we head into the afternoon, and still those blustery winds continuing. But highs of around 17, 18 Celsius in the south, so feeling pleasant for the time of year. Heading into Friday, quite an unsettled day. We've got those outbreaks of rain erratically moving their way eastwards across the country, some heavy downpours at times. As this clears away, we will see some brighter weather along with some showers too. This sets us up for a fairly unsettled weekend with rain and showers, so stay updated. Otherwise, that's it from me. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel. Good afternoon, I'm Johnny Ratner. Big problems up in Leicestershire for the M1. The motorway is blocked northbound just before the East Midlands Airport, the Nottingham South turn-off junction 24. There's been a collision. Meanwhile, on the Surrey stretch of the M25, the inside lane of 4 closed anti-clockwise from junction 9 to 8, the Leatherhead-Reigate stretch emergency pothole repair works are underway. It's queuing nearly back to the A3 in the works of Wisley. And heading out of Colchester, the A133 Clingo Hill shut eastbound. A lorry left a spillage of fuel all over the carriageway in the roadworks just after the Greenstead roundabout. On the M20 in Kent, 2 lanes are closed coastbound from junction 4 to 5, Slaborn to Aylesford after a car broke down. And in West Sussex at East Preston, the A259 closed westbound following a multi-vehicle collision. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We are doing Donald. She's absolutely right. Michelle Dewberry with you till 7, Jacqueline Foster and Aaron Bastani. Now, let's do the Donald then, shall we? Because Donald Trump, his campaign team have made a formal legal complaint against the Labour Party here in the UK over what they call, and I quote, blatant foreign interference, of course, referring to the US election that's taking place. It's flown by now. It's less than 2 weeks away. Look, let's listen to Angela Rayner before we get into this with the panel.
Mr. Speaker, I'm loving this loving. I don't often get it. But I say to the honourable gentleman is that people in their own time often go and campaign, and that's what we've seen. It happens in all political parties. People go and campaign and they do what they want to do in their own time with their own money.
So this is all about this concept. It all started off with a LinkedIn post, so it was, essentially saying about 100 volunteers to go over to help with the campaign. Accommodation would have been sorted. They very quickly withdrew or deleted that LinkedIn post, didn't they? This is it on the screen, if you haven't already seen it. Aaron Bastani, where are you on this?
So this was 100 present and former Labour staffers. So this isn't just, you know, 2 lads down the dog and duck. This is people who are involved at the highest levels of British politics. Is it election interference? No, it's happened before. I'm sure it'll happen again. Conservatives in their free time have campaigned for Republican candidates and been involved in Republican campaigns over the years. I have to say, though, I do find it weird. It doesn't have to be illegal or malpractice for it not to be weird. It's very strange. And if I was just your regular punter in a general election and I had an American knock on my door saying, you need to vote for this person because he's or she's going to do X, Y, Z, I'd say, excuse me, where are you from? Do you live here? How do you know they're the best candidate? And I do question, actually, whether or not these people doing this, quote-unquote, campaigning are adding the value they think they are. But it is a major problem now because, of course, you have a Labour government, and if there is a Republican president in the Oval Office after November 4th, 5th, then this is going to be a point of contention, and it isn't necessary.
Jackie?
Well, the thing is, we have sister parties. So, for example, the Republicans are a sister party to the Conservatives, the Liberals in Australia, and then the Labour Party will have sister parties like the Democrats and others. So there is a sort of international sort of umbrella where parties of different, you know, left, right, do actually come together. And I've been over to America. I think the difference here, I actually went to a Republican convention years and years ago. It was actually fantastic, you know, the entertainment that was there. But this is slightly different because nobody asked me to go and knock on the door. I think the point you raised and go, hello, you know, come and vote for whatever. And the fact that they sort of come forth with, you know, 100 staffers and whatever, I think this is where the problem has arisen. When we've tended to go over or people come here to see us from these different parties, they're not normally campaigning. They're not coming out with us to campaign. And I think this is where the line has become blurred. So it'd be interesting to see how this goes, obviously with what Donald Trump has done. Whether they see the legality, because there was all of the issues at the last election over Russian influence and various other countries having external influence. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it works out. But, you know, to have a group of 100, that I don't think I don't think that's acceptable, really. I would, you know, as you said, 100 Americans coming over and knocking on the door here, people would go, you know, who who are you? So, yeah, I think it's a fair point in a way. I think it just needs to be thought through what you can do.
Donald Trump, of course, many people are saying that he don't care less about it, really, but he's just kind of trying to dine out on it from the perspective of, look at these people, foreign interference and so on and so forth. But you will have strong opinions on it, I'm absolutely sure. But look, another story that caught my eye, because other people as well, on the flip side of this, by the way, other people are accusing Elon Musk. They're saying that he is doing election interference at his side of the fence as well. But speaking of Elon Musk, another story that caught my eye, leaked documents apparently have exposed an alleged attempt from the Centre for Countering Digital Hate. Have you heard of those guys? Apparently their mission is, and I quote, to kill Elon Musk's social media platform, apparently so by targeting advertisers. What do you think to this, Saran Bastani?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of the Centre for Countering Digital Hate. They had a sister organisation, I think, called Stop Funding Fake News. It's a tactic which they've tried to employ in this country, and it's obviously being used in the US. I have a problem with it. I think it undermines free speech and a varied media environment, which I do support, even though I'm myself on the left. I think it's good to hear a range of views, and I think the recipient can come to their own decisions. I think that's the smartest way to conduct oneself. In terms of this document, though, it really is extraordinary because, of course, that headline is Kill Musk's Twitter. And you have in these minutes from their monthly meetings, top priority, kill Musk's Twitter. What does that mean precisely? I think it's actually very dangerous. And the biggest concern for me is that the people involved in the CCDH come from the centre-left of this country, and they have employed the precise same tactics, not only against political rivals on the right, which they did, by the way, but also on the left. We saw very similar tactics by these people within inside the Labour Party against people to their left. And this is the main concern for me, which is, look, if you have a political position, argue for it, try and persuade, and try and change other people's opinions. But they don't do that. Instead, they attack the social networks of people that they're trying to discredit rather than take on their arguments. And in this case, it's Elon Musk.
Jacqueline, you'll have strong views.
Yeah, well, I'm a real fan of Elon. I think he's absolutely fantastic.
I was a bit distracted by him dancing there and whipping his clothes off as Saran Bastani was talking. But anyway,
I like his space programme. I think he's phenomenal. I love people that are outside the box and these great entrepreneurs. But this is actually this is the serious story, not the one about the Labour supporters hopping off to America. Because, as you say, you know, we're looking at people now who are actually trying to stop free speech. And they are not centre-left. This is the left. This is, in my view, what I don't think they are. Predominantly the hard left. What's also...
I wish they were hard left. They're very competent at it.
What I find is a bit of concern, I think, is the chap, is it Mr Morgan McSweeney, who's part of now Keir Starmer's staff.
His chief of staff.
His chief of staff now. Is actually involved with this group who are obviously actively trying to stop Elon Musk. They obviously try. What they do things like they try and stop them getting advertising. They've done the same to you, Michelle, on GB News.
They have.
We have groups here because they don't like what you stand for or what you do as a news outlet. What they do is, you know, they go on Twitter and they start complaining, and then they're complaining to Ofcom. And then you're bogged down with all these complaints, which are ridiculously stupid little complaints, because somebody doesn't like what somebody said on one of your programmes. And, of course, then advertisers are anxious, quite rightly. They think, oh, my God, you know, if we advertise on this station, is it going to work out all right, because they're investing? And this is deliberate. Elon Musk, of course, he's a very powerful man, so he can really take them on. But, you know, I think it's wholly unacceptable. They just do not... They only want to listen to their own narrative, and they don't want anybody from any other section of politics to have a right to disagree with them.
I think it's appalling, actually, some of the things that go on when it comes to the reactions to GB News. We value each and every single one of you, dear audience members, whether you listen or watch. You're very important to us. And what happens with us still to this day, when we get a new advertiser on board who wants to share their products with you, often within minutes, very, very well organised and slick campaign groups will pile into these organisations. We've seen that you advertise on GB News. They will often clip up a small segment of something, more often than not taken completely out of context, saying, look, you know, you say on your website that you support this, whatever policy it is, but look at this person on GB News from about, I don't know, 2 years ago saying X, Y and Z. It's in contradiction. And it's this huge, slick operation. And then what happens with not all brands, by the way, and thank you to those brands that it doesn't happen with, but for some other brands, then they'll panic and they'll bow down to those pressure groups. The end result meaning that you, the audience at home, the very valued audience, you miss out on learning about those advertisers' products. I mean, who wins from that other than activist groups? Really? Is that the kind of future that we want? Why? All because people hear opinions that they may disagree with on this channel. And you know what? That's what life is. We all have different opinions and outlooks and all the rest of it. And so it should be like that in a democracy.
But they're also closing down. I mean, we get in the closing down of free speech in universities, on campuses, people being cancelled, particularly if you're somebody like me with a sort of, I'm on the right of politics. I mean, it's just absolutely outrageous.
And we'd also, with the media, we have a regulator. Right? That's the point. We have a regulator, and as a society, we've decided that they regulate what happens in the media, and it shouldn't be left to private interest groups because, of course, they bring their own view on things. I would say the CCDH previously have attacked The Canary, which was a very successful left-wing website. They had 8.5 million hits a month at one point.
But nobody's heard of them.
Pardon?
I said nobody's heard.
Well,
yeah, he just said about
because they've been cancelled. I think in 2016, 2017, over 2 years, they got more hits than the Spectator, which is a £100 million magazine in this country, and they were destroyed by the precise same people. It's interesting because you're saying nobody's heard of them. I feel like with that comment, because you disagree with the Canary, you think it's OK for them to be cancelled.
I disagreed with them. I just said nobody's heard of them.
It felt quite pointed. I mean, they got but they were destroyed. They got 8.5 million hits a month at their peak, and they were destroyed by the CCDH. I don't agree, by the way, with everything they wrote.
The majority of people who are closed down, Aaron, are on the right of
I will be
politics.
No, Jacqueline, I will be very clear. No, that was without doubt.
Whatever the Canaries have done.
No, that was without doubt the largest target in this country that the CCDH has taken down. Yeah. They were on the left, without doubt. That's not up to debate.
From this group as well, because there's more groups than this one.
No, of course there are, but the Canary is the biggest one they've taken down, and they were on the left. My point is, these people are very much in the centre of politics. They're
just be clear what that was about. Just be clear what that was about. By the way, they said, or
they wanted
the campaign was about that. They was arguing, or people would argue, and this is what happened that they were essentially accusing that outlet of being anti-Semitic and too pro-Palestine.
The big article that got the Canary in trouble was basically calling out a political consultancy lobby group, which they said effectively runs the Labour Party, which is an exaggeration, it doesn't, but it has a huge amount of political influence. And they lifted the lid on frankly, how the centre faction within Labour conducts itself. I've seen firsthand how those people behave. They're some of the most dishonourable people I've ever met. They're worse than people on the right or on the radical left because they are so entitled to power. They think it belongs to them and nobody else.
Yeah, but let's bring it back to 2024. In the last few years, that's not been about the left. It's been about anybody that sets anything up that is on the centre-right politics. We're the ones that are being closed down.
Well, I think CCH, it's anybody who disagrees with them.
The whole issue, all of the issues on free speech are people who have centre-right or right politics. They're the ones that are closed down. It's not people who are on the left.
I think it's anybody. I think, like you said, it's anybody.
We've seen the narrative. The narratives are there.
It's anybody who's got a heterodox opinion. I mean,
the narratives are there.
The politician who was cancelled more than anybody in this country is Jeremy Corbyn. It's because he had an opinion which the political and media class didn't like.
Well, let me tell you something anyway. Elon Musk, he's having none of it, ladies and gents.
Right.
He retweeted a lot of this leaked information last night, and his direct quote said, "This is a war." Free speech is essential to protect. Everyone has different opinions. This is what we like to do on this channel. We hear different opinions, we debate them, and you at home deserve to hear from different advertisers. You deserve to be able to choose the social media platforms, whether that's Twitter or whatever it is, that you want to be a part of. Anyway, look, we did go to this organisation for comment. They gave a very long statement in response, but long story short, they basically reckon that they stopped the spread of online hate and disinformation. They reckon that they have really innovative ways of doing that. They say that they're not supported or financed by any political party or organisation. They reckon that they want to protect human rights and civil liberties and so on and so forth. I mean, it does go on a bit, to be honest, quite frankly. But yeah, long story short, they say that they don't engage with conspiracy theories. So make of all of that what you will. But look, after the break, you know, Labour now saying that they are going to do a review into firearms officers' accountability. This is about whether or not these people should be named and charged. Your thoughts? See you in 2.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, let's speak now to Sales Director at Savills for Quinta Properties, Raquel Santos, who is live for us in Portugal. Raquel, good to see you this morning. Why are all these celebrities flocking to Portugal all of a sudden?
Yeah, I guess it's just because of basically the great lifestyle that we have, security, you know. Portugal has kind of been a hidden, tucked away gem for quite a while that people didn't realize existed. And with the international flights that have, you know, with the American flights coming in, it's kind of been put back on the map as a country that's worth visiting and worth investing in due to the secure investments that we offer in real estate.
Raquel, is it anything to do with tax rates? Because I think capital gains tax is, I think if it's over a certain amount, you pay half of your rate, which is 28%. Capital gains on shares and cryptocurrencies is 0. Is it anything to do with that? Because over here in the UK, big storm at the moment about millionaires apparently leaving in exodus because of the mooted increases in taxes in just a few weeks.
Yes, so obviously the alterations that are happening with the UK in terms of the tax that's being implemented on the capital gains, as you mentioned, we've definitely noticed has become a big drive, mostly on the vendor side as well, who are looking to sell because they don't want to be hit, you know, with these higher capital gains, which is close to coming into effect.
Raquel, have you noticed then millionaires, high net worth people from the UK getting in touch with you looking to relocate?
Definitely. It's for multiple reasons, obviously, the changes that are due to come into place, obviously, and Portugal just seems to be a safe option always when things do kind of change. People opt to come into Portugal because we're quite steady, we're quite stable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7. Aaron Bastani and Baroness Jacqueline Foster remains alongside me. Now, there is one last story I want to discuss with you before we bid farewell for the evening. Now, we know the story of Chris Cabba. We know the story of the firearms officer that, of course, was charged with murder but then found not guilty. Well, talking again about whether or not there should be more protection, if you would like, afforded to firearms officers. Yvette Cooper talking about reviews and so on and so forth. Let's cut to the chase. Where are you on this, Jacqueline?
Well, in this particular case, I think the firearms officers are absolutely phenomenal. They do the most marvellous job in protecting us. And you'll speak to many of them, and in their entire career, they've never really had to use their firearm. So they're using this firearm very sparingly. In this particular case, I think the officer was hung out to dry. I think there was political influence, really from the beginning because of the outcry of what had happened. The fact then he eventually was named, I thought was absolutely appalling. And notwithstanding the decision by the Crown Prosecution Service to actually take this to trial. The whole anonymity issue is very important because this officer, for example, I think the children were taken out of school, the effect on the families, notwithstanding that the jury came to a correct decision. So I think this is a real tough one, but they need our protection. And if we don't do that, we're going to have even more of them leaving the service.
Well, Yvette Cooper's announcement would basically mean that these people would be given anonymity unless they are convicted. I would certainly agree with that. Aaron Bastani.
That seems like a really sensible proposal. I think most people watching and listening can remember the London Bridge attacks, where you had rapid response firearms units turn up and save many people's lives, I suspect.
Yeah.
And that really brings into sharp relief how important these people can be. And that happens relatively regularly in a city the size of London. What I would say is I disagree in so much. I think it's good it went to court. I think that's good. And I think it's good it went to a jury and the jury found him not guilty because I think that... Because it gives confidence in the justice system and we need that.
No, but in this case...
And he was found not guilty.
Of course you've got to go through a justice system.
By a jury of his peers.
But
and I think that's really important.
They also have their own police independent investigators. And they knew...
You need to let me finish. Because I'm trying to make the whole point. I'm trying to make the whole point. We've obviously seen some footage of him since then, Chris Cabot, not particularly savoury or nice individual by the looks of things.
Whoa there, you're going to get in trouble, because before, I want to let you finish your point as well, but you're going to get in trouble, right? Let me tell you for why. Because I think he was about to explain some stuff about Chris Cabot.
I won't say anything else.
Look at this MP today. Look what she had to say. This is Kim Johnson, listen.
The media are using racist gang tropes to justify the killing of Chris Cabot. 1,900 people have died in police custody since 1990. The police do have protections. You know, we know that our black communities are over-policed and under-supported. So can the Home Secretary give us assurances that we and our communities are kept safe and that extra protections are not given to the police because they already have the protections they need?
So I interrupted you tongue-in-cheek there because I feel that you were about to state some actual facts.
So, I would let the cat out of the bag. Obviously, there was all sorts of, because of the way our justice system works, all sorts of information regarding Chris Cabot was released after this verdict came out from the jury.
Facts.
And he's not particularly nice person. He's done some very bad things. Of course, that doesn't mean that he should be executed on the street, but that's not what happened. Well, there's a big distance, right, between murder, which was what this charge was, he's found not guilty, and should a police officer be engaged in an extrajudicial killing of somebody who was unarmed. Chris Cabot wasn't armed. Really important to say that.
Well, hold on. He didn't have a gun in his hand, but some would argue that having your foot on the accelerator of a very heavy car and driving that towards people is a weapon of sorts.
But that's why the officer was found not guilty, right?
It is. It's a ton and a half of an Audi.
No, of course, but that's why the officer was found not guilty. I think if a police officer shoots somebody who's unarmed, I think it's perfectly sensible to say, OK, well, what's happened here? And I genuinely think that is a positive thing about British justice. This went to a jury trial. The officer's been found not guilty. The issue is him being named and the implications it's had for his private life. And I think that's what Yvette Cooper's commenting on. And I think it's a very positive contribution.
There's another case that's run parallel in a way, and it's gone into the public domain. The officer was not named. He had to shoot a person, an adult, in a house where the children were obviously in danger. And you know, that wasn't all over everywhere. But in this case, where my concern is in cases like this, I mean, I do not believe every black person watching this programme thinks that he was given a raw deal, Chris Cabot. I think that the majority of people understand what happened.
Well,
They want proper justice. But, you know, some of these people, they don't speak for whole reams of people.
But this is what I found really interesting, and this is why I interrupted you.
And they're using it like an excuse, which I find is not acceptable.
This notion from that MP there, that people are giving, quote, racist gang tropes. Yeah. If somebody is a gangster with a rap sheet longer than my arm, starting when they are 13 and they are an absolute wrong-un, it is not a racist gang trope to say that. When people shoot people, it's not tropes doing the shooting, is it? Words fail me. That's all I've got time for tonight. Aaron, Jacqueline, thank you. Thanks to you at home. Have a good night. Night.
We'll see a cold snap. Ooh.